I love seeing that people are getting more and more into skincare, but what a lot of people are missing out on is that there are certain skincare products and certain ingredients that should not be used together. So today we're gonna go over that. I'm Dr. Sam Ellis, and I'm a board-certified dermatologist in Northern California, and I'm here to help you understand your skin and find products that work for you. So if that sounds good, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I wanted to make this video about what skincare ingredients you shouldn't use together for multiple reasons. One, I see a ton of misinformation out there about things that shouldn't be used together when in fact you can use them together. And also, I see people out there putting their own routines together and maybe using things together that shouldn't be. So I want to address that as well. And when I'm thinking about why two types of skincare products shouldn't be used together, it's usually because they're falling into one of two categories. Either one of those products is inactivating another product, or two, using those products together may cause too much irritation to the skin. First, let's talk about products that can cancel each other out or inactivate each other, because we do not want to be doing that. When it comes to skincare, there are certain active ingredients or certain products that work by a process called oxidation. These ingredients essentially create something called oxygen-free radicals, which are molecules that bump into other things on your skin and neutralize them. And that can be a really great thing when it comes to deactivating bacteria or viruses on your skin, for example. The two most common oxidizing agents that I see used in skincare are benzoyl peroxide and hypochlorous acid. Benzoyl peroxide is one of the most popular anti-acne ingredients. I recommend it all the time to my patients, but it doesn't play nice with everything. For these products that work via oxidation, it's almost like they create like a little mini chemical explosion on the skin. So you generally don't want to combine them with other ingredients or other products that are considered unstable or less stable, and you don't want to combine them with antioxidants since they are pro-oxidant and are going to deactivate your antioxidant effects. I would say some of the common things you would want to avoid using benzoyl peroxide or hypochlorous acid with are things like retinols. Retinol and prescription tretinoin are both very unstable, so you don't want to use them with benzoyl peroxide. But adapalene, also known as differin, is a third-generation retinoid, and it's very stable in the presence of benzoyl peroxide. So often when I'm counseling my acne patients and they want to be using two anti-acne things in one part of their routine, I'm having them use benzoyl peroxide and adapalene together. Now that does have the potential to be irritating, which we'll get to in a second, but they're not going to inactivate one another. The same goes for prescription hydroquinone, which is often prescribed to help with discoloration and things like melasma. But if you were to combine these oxidizing skincare ingredients with hydroquinone, it can make the hydroquinone a lot less effective. As I mentioned earlier, you also want to be careful about using benzoyl peroxide or hypochlorous acid with antioxidants, for example, like vitamin C. And this is actually where order matters a little bit. So hypochlorous acid, which I love as a skincare ingredient, it's very soothing for the skin. I've even included it in my own skincare line Prequel. If you're using that before you use an antioxidant like vitamin C, that's fine. You just want to make sure it's completely dry on the skin before you go in with your antioxidant. What you wouldn't want to do is put your vitamin C on and then spray hypochlorous acid right on top of it. And if you want to use benzoyl peroxide in vitamin C, that can be okay as well, but you would want to use benzoyl peroxide in a wash-off form. So you wash your face with benzoyl peroxide if you're trying to treat acne, you rinse it off, then you can go in with vitamin C, no problem. But you wouldn't, for example, want to put a little benzoyl peroxide spot treatment on if you also put vitamin C on your face. Now, one question I get is, well, Dr. Ellis, I like to spray my hypochlorous acid on midday, kind of as a refresher and to help with irritation on my skin. If your products have been applied in the morning, they are well beyond absorbed by the time you're midday, so you don't have to worry about deactivating at that point. We just wouldn't want to follow it up directly in a skincare routine. Another thing that's come into question when it comes to layering skincare or skincare ingredients that don't get along are copper peptides and vitamin C. And the concern here is that copper within copper peptides may neutralize vitamin C or deactivate it. Now, in theory, this is true, but I've heard a couple of different cosmetic chemists speak on this, and what they have said is that the way that the peptide molecule is actually formed, that little copper molecule is sort of hidden within that matrix, so it's unlikely to be bumping into vitamin C and actually neutralizing it. But again, that is a theory. To my knowledge, there has not been direct studies of copper peptides and vitamin C and exploring that specific efficacy, so it's something I just steer clear of combining. And again, when I'm talking about combining, I'm talking about in the same routine, in the the same time of day. You could certainly put your vitamin C on in the morning and use your copper peptides in the evening, and you don't worry about it. I promise this whole video isn't about vitamin C, but because it is relatively unstable, it can be problematic with a lot of different things if not considered. And one other thing people wonder about with vitamin C is if it can be used with niacinamide, because there are tons of posts out there on social media saying you shouldn't combine them. But that misconception is based on very old data, and it has been dispelled time and time again. Vitamin C and niacinamide are completely fine together. And in fact, they actually work quite nicely together to combat hyperpigmentation. Now, aside from oxidating ingredients, inactivating antioxidants, another area where we have to be careful when it comes to combining skincare is sunscreen. Because sunscreens can be prone to destabilization as well, and it's important to be aware of that. The big mistake I see people make with sunscreens is that they mix things into their sunscreen. Whether that's moisturizer, I've seen people put vitamin C or other serums into their sunscreen. I've seen people mix their makeup into their sunscreen, and those are all no-nos. And the reason for that is really twofold. So sunscreens contain UV filters, which can be destabilized when exposed to other chemicals in other skincare products. And secondly, which I actually think is the bigger problem, is that sunscreens work by creating a very cohesive protective film on the skin. And when you mix things into your sunscreen, you can disrupt your sunscreen's ability to make that protective film. So you could be taking an SPF 50 sunscreen, mixing a small drop of something into it, and completely making it ineffective. And I should mention, this also applies to mixing different sunscreens together. You might say, oh, well, this has similar ingredients to this, so why can't I combine them? No. Mixing one sunscreen with another can still create that film forming problem. And again, one ingredient in one sunscreen may deactivate another ingredient in another. Two caveats here. One, even though I don't want you to mix your sunscreens together and then apply them to your face, you can certainly layer sunscreens with other things in your routine. And the other thing I get asked about when I talk about not mixing sunscreens is people say, well, what about, your tinted moisturizer that has sunscreen? That's mixing sunscreen and makeup. But the difference there is that was professionally formulated, and they took that overall formula and they tested it to see if the SPF was still functional, and it was. When you're doing your own home experiment of mixing your makeup into your sunscreen, you have no clue if it's still effective. And this approach of layering, not mixing your skincare, I think is a good approach overall. If a brand really wants you to be mixing things together, they'll just formulate it all together for you. So that covers skincare that you shouldn't mix because something becomes ineffective. Now let's talk about skincare ingredients that you have to be careful about mixing because you don't want to irritate your skin. And this is going to be a lot less black and white because it relies much more on what your unique skin can handle. The easiest way to look at this is to think of all the skincare things that have potential to irritate your skin. Most commonly, those are going to be things like vitamin C, mostly because vitamin C has to be formulated at a lower pH to be effective and be properly absorbed. And low pH means more acidic. More acidic usually means more irritating for your skin. It's also going to include things like exfoliating acids, like salicylic acid, lactic acid, glycolic acid, and those can be irritating for a couple of reasons. One, they are often formulated at a low pH because that's where they're the most effective. And two, they are irritating because they increase cell turnover and they are meant to break apart the cells on your skin. That's what exfoliation does, but that can be overly irritating for some people. And then of course, topical retinoids like retinol, tretinoin, adapalene, these are notorious for being irritating on your skin even when you're not combining them with other irritating things. So technically all these things can be used together in the same routine because again, we're not worried about them inactivating one another. You could exfoliate your skin, and then you could go in and apply your vitamin C serum, and then you could put your topical retinoid on. Now, most people's skin will not be able to handle that, but if yours can, that's not a problem. Ooh, and let's not forget about benzoyl peroxide. I know I was talking about it earlier that it can inactivate some of your skincare, but it's also notoriously pretty irritating. So if you're going to have it in a routine with your retinoid, for example, because that combo is fantastic for treating acne, you may want to think about using your benzoyl peroxide in the morning and then using your retinoid at night, because even though they're both irritating to the skin, if you separate where they are in your routine or the time of day that you're using them, you're going to be able to tolerate it better. Another general rule of thumb that I guide my patients with is on days that you are exfoliating, skip your topical retinoid. Your skin doesn't need such a big hit all at once. And so for a lot of my patients, that's going to look like using their topical tretinoin 4 to 6 nights a week, and then maybe exfoliating a couple nights a week on those off nights. And the most important thing is to listen to your skin. Sometimes your skin is irritated before it shows any signs of redness. So for example, if you go to put your moisturizer on, which normally doesn't feel like anything on your skin, but you're noticing some stinging or some tingling, that can be a sign that your skin barrier is in a little bit of bad shape, and it might mean you need to cut back on some of those actives. So in summary, we want to be careful about how we're using oxidizing skincare like hypochlorous acid and benzoyl peroxide. They have a place in your skincare routine, but you need to be thoughtful about it. We also want to be focusing on layering, not mixing our skincare. And lastly, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to how our skin feels, making sure that we're not using too many irritating things in one routine. Now, if you have any questions about combining skincare or any other combos that you're not sure if you can use together, definitely ask in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next time.